Hello, baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Welcome into On Deck. I'm Tyler Redmond. As always, thank you so much for checking out the channel. I do appreciate it. While you're here, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay updated with everything going on here at On Deck and, of course, with the Atlanta Braves. And I know when you're looking at this set, you're probably thinking, Tyler, where are you? I am in what we call the podcast studio here at actually my work. I'm in between shifts, but I wanted to jump on here tonight because I think there's a lot to talk about today. Obviously, winter meetings are in full effect. Things are going kind of nuts, and, it's at the end of the day, guys, we're going to see more of this. This is going to be commonplace. We've seen a lot take place today, namely in the NL East. Of course, Verlander, he was picked up today by the New York Mets. That's the biggest deal for us tonight, I think. I thought when I woke up this morning, it was going to be that Clayton Kershaw was the biggest news on the day. Of course, he signed a one-year, $20 million deal earlier today. That was blown out of the water. It was that Verlander signed I believe, $86 million deal for 2 years, which is a huge number for a 39-year-old. Granted, if you're going to give it to any 39-year-old, one that's bouncing off of a AL Cy Young Award and Comeback Player of the Year is probably the one you want to give it to. So credit to the Mets. They managed to go out and replace Jacob deGrom, which I was impressed with. I'm not surprised that Steve Cohen spent money. I'm surprised that he did it in such a responsive way. I thought that was interesting. The other thing that I thought was interesting was Trea Turner today. Of course, he signed an 11-year, $300 million deal to the Phillies. That was huge, and we're going to talk about both of these deals, and I've seen a lot of Braves fans talking about this, and I needed to address it. Now, when it comes to the Verlander deal, of course, he's not alone there. He is returning to his former Detroit Tiger teammate in the rotation, Max Scherzer, in that rotation, and they are going to combine this year. I just want you to think about this too. They're going to combine this year with $86 million, okay? Now, I did a little math earlier, and I'm not that great at math, but I went and did some math earlier. I want you to realize that $86 million, if you were buying from the Braves roster, would land you this package. Olsen, Riley, Acuna, Albies, Fried, Strider, Harris, d'Arnaud, and Contreras. Okay? So again, it would give you the infield minus Swanson, your outfield minus left field, and it would give you 2 starters and your catching core for $82 million. That is $4 million less than what the Mets are paying both Verlander and Scherzer for this year. Okay? Now, that's not the AAV. That is what they are making this year, but that is the difference. Okay? So I know we're seeing all these big deals happen, and I get all of that. And a lot of people are saying the Braves need to go do things. Look, I told you a few years ago that the Phillies went out and spent stupid money, and it's still stupid money, okay? And I don't necessarily think that is where the Braves need to go. I think, a lot of people are looking at this shortstop thing. A lot of people want to Trea Turner. I told you that if we couldn't get Swanson, I would love Trea Turner. That being said, I don't love him for 11 years, $300 million. And especially with Trea Turner, and I mean this with no disrespect, you're talking about one of the best players in the game right now. I mean this with no disrespect to him, but you're talking about a guy who literally, his game is so dependent on speed. He's 30 years old almost. I just wonder over this 11 years how much is speed going to be a non-factor here. I really think that I look at that and I say, man, I get it. I get paying him that because he is that good of a player right now. But I'm also thankful that it wasn't the Braves. I didn't want the Braves to go out and spend quote-unquote stupid money because at the end of the day, guys, stupid money is what it is. It's stupid money. Now, what do I think is going on with this Dansby Swanson ordeal? I think that's where what you want to talk about and where you want to go with it. Look, I would love to land Dansby Swanson, especially now that Trea Turner's off the table. Correa's not going to take a team-friendly deal, let's be real. Bogarts is still on the table. But at the end of the day, guys, we all know that any Braves fan wants Dansby Swanson. I think that's what makes sense. Now, in the negotiations, you're going to hear a lot of things. I was watching MLB Network earlier, and it was basically stated that Dansby's best bet is to wait. because that's what would make sense for him, because the Braves have already expressed that they're going to wait. They're really going for Dansby. They're not going out trying to get Correa or Bogarts or anything like that. They are waiting on Dansby. So with that, it probably is in Dansby's best interest to wait and wait it out and wait it out, because the Braves have pretty much stated that they're good with going with Grissom. I believe them. I'm taking Double A at his word here, which is something that maybe isn't the smartest thing to do, but I am taking him at his word because I do believe it. I think that they do want Dansby, but if they can't get Dansby, they are okay with going with Grissom and letting him and Arcia hold it down. Because when you look at the lineup, guys, there are so many guys within that lineup that can carry the team. And I don't mean that with any, I understand how good Dansby is, but he is just one piece of a multifaceted lineup. And, we have other, frankly, other priorities this year, left field being one, offloading Ozuna being one. And also, I would even say that, obviously shortstop is one as well, but maybe even starting pitching. We have a lot to get to. And if we can't land Dansby, the Braves very well may move on, but they may not move on by going to another player. They may move on by going to Vaughn Grissom. And that would be a very interesting turn of events. We'll, of course, keep monitoring that. But with the Dansby ordeal, I think everybody would like Dansby. Personally, I would like him at about $22 million for 5 or 6 years, which is right around, I would say, $120, I think. Don't quote me on that. That is quick math. But $22 million is right around where I like him, especially after Turner went for $27 million today. I don't think Dansby's quite there with Trea Turner. Trea Turner's had much more success over multiple years. Swanson had one good year. And I think he's going to get better. But at the same time, you have to go by what you've seen, not by what you think. Right? So we will see what happens. But that is where I'm at with the Swanson ordeal. I know a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are telling you things. Don't believe everything you hear on the internet. I'm just telling you that from me. Do not believe everything you see on the internet. There's a lot of information out there. I've heard the idea that he's going to the Cubs. I've heard the idea that he's going to the Dodgers. Nothing is official until it is out there and official, and it's not official right now. I do believe the Braves are making efforts to talk to Dansby. I know Alex Anthopoulos came out and said he's had a conversation with him. Didn't get specific. He won't get specific. That is the one good thing about Swanson. If you hear that the Braves are interested in somebody, the other team leaked it or the player that they're interested in leaked it. That's how good that front office is, and that's true. So that's kind of how I feel about that. But, yeah, a wild day in the world of Major League Baseball, no doubt about it. An absolutely wild day. Again, Clayton Kershaw started the day by signing a one-year deal to remain on the Dodgers, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. And then, of course, Verlander and Trea Turner. It's far from over. You still have Correa on the board. You have Swanson on the board, Bogarts on the board, and that's just at the shortstop position. Winter meetings is here. It's real, and it is wild. And I can't wait to keep following it along with you guys. Now, that being said, I appreciate all of you tuning in tonight. We are not going to have a very long night tonight, like I said earlier in the show. I am in between shifts at the moment, so I will have to do a hard cutoff at about 9:45, maybe 10 o'clock. That being said, I appreciate you tuning in. If you would do me the ultimate favor of liking the video, subscribing to the channel so you can keep track of this and continue to talk Braves with me and, of course, other Braves fans, I would appreciate it. And, of course, hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay updated with everything going on here at On Deck and, of course, with the Atlanta Braves. I'm going to answer as many questions as I can in the chat. That being said, remember, Super Chats do get your priority. They just do. So if you super chat, I will answer your question immediately. So just keep that in mind. Also, if you have any questions with trades, I'll be glad to answer them. If you have any suggestions on content you'd like to see throughout the offseason, I'll be glad to address it. If you have any questions just for me, I'll be glad to address it. Kicking it off with Austin Nocho. What are your thoughts on Brian Reynolds, and what could we trade to get him? Yeah, I was going to talk about this. I figured I'd wait for you to ask because I knew that it was going to be I knew that at some point it was going to be asked. Look, I would absolutely love if the Braves landed Brian Reynolds. And when the interest popped up the other day that, hey, Brian Reynolds very well might be interested in a trade, like he literally asked for a trade, it was music to my ears. If you remember a few years ago, the Braves traded for Richard Rodriguez. This is during the 2021 season, and I actually predicted that. but I thought it would be a combined trade. I thought it would be Brian Reynolds and Richard Rodriguez. I have been on the Brian Reynolds train for a long time. I think if you got somebody like a Brian Reynolds, he would fit in the lineup well because we have so much swing and miss, and I think Reynolds would kind of offset that. I think he would be a different type of bat in the lineup, and the more diversity, the better your lineup is. And I also think he's a good fielder. You know, I mean, the dude is an all-star caliber player, no doubt. And ultimately, I think he would fit the Braves. He's expressed interest in playing for the Braves. I think it would be a good fit to have Brian Reynolds. That being said, the Pirates have already said no to the request for a trade, so I think it's going to take quite a bit. But I do think that the Braves do have a very quality trade package ready to go. If you saw the other day, the Braves apparently expressed interest in Sean Murphy from the A's. He's a catcher. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the Braves, but the Braves have a lot of catchers. They have d'Arnaud, obviously, who's on contract for another year. They have Contreras, who's on contract till 2025. They have Pena for another year. They have a lot of catching. They don't need any more catchers. The only way I could see them trading for a catcher is if they intended to either trade that catcher right back or if they intended to trade another catcher. So let's just say you threw in a catcher. We'll call it Contreras because he would frankly be more valuable in a trade. You could possibly trade him, Ozuna, Cash, and maybe another low-level prospect to the Pirates for Brian Reynolds. Now that probably sounds like, dude, there's no way they're going to do it. You're probably right. They probably wouldn't take Ozuna in that trade, but that's what my first offer would be. And going from there, I would probably say that, I'd probably say that after that, I'd just take Ozuna out of the equation, and then I would say, okay, Contreras and a pitching prospect, a low-level pitching prospect, somebody that is very unproven, and it's going to cost. I mean, they're not going to want to give up Brian Reynolds for nothing, but he wants out of there, and if he wants out of there, I think they ought to do it. But we'll see. We will see for sure. I would love to get him. A perfect offseason for me would have been, I know a lot of people were on the Verlander train and the DeGrom train. I never was. I think we have plenty of starting pitching. A perfect offseason for me would be Brian Reynolds and Dansby Swanson and some bullpen pieces. That would be the perfect offseason for me. And I only say bullpen pieces because Matzik is out for the year. Luke Jackson's coming back from Tommy John. Kenley Jansen is a free agent. I do think bullpen is something that is being very overlooked right now because you have a lot of big names in free agency. But I think we really need to put focus back on the bullpen because we always need bullpen help, and that is not a joke. That is serious. We literally always need it. So bullpen, obviously shortstop, obviously left field, Brian Reynolds, Dansby Swanson, bullpen pieces, and I think we're a World Series caliber team immediately. But we'll see. We will see. Corey Carter says, Corey Carter says, so glad we aren't trading Wild Bill for Murphy. Yeah, we're not trading Contreras for Murphy. I don't think that's exactly how that will go down. If anything, I think we would trade prospects for Murphy and attempt to have him for depth. I would much rather keep Contreras on the Braves. Make no mistake. But if you want to offset Ozuna, which is definitely a priority for the Braves, make no mistake about it. I know we're walking on eggshells when we talk about it, but make no mistake, the Braves want Ozuna out of Atlanta. Make no mistake. They really do. Because when you see any Braves media that has any – look, guys, I'm unaffiliated with the Atlanta Braves. Wish I was, but I am unaffiliated with the Atlanta Braves. But when you see the media outlets that – have a relationship with Alex Anthopoulos and know how the Braves work, they speak pretty candidly that we want Ozuna gone. And I don't think that's any surprise. But if you want that to happen, you're going to have to give up something that you would want. Look, if I see I see Richard Davis says, I might put Contreras in for Reynolds. I agree. Look, as much as we all love Reynolds, catching is not a problem right now. We have Travis d'Arnaud. I think we could get d'Arnaud to sign past this year if we wanted to, not to mention we have Manny Pena. If Contreras can land you the piece that you're missing, I think it'd be worth it. I know it would make a lot of people upset naturally, but I do think it would be worth it for sure. Let's see. Sorry about that, guys. JL says the Braves need a left fielder more than Dansby. I would actually agree with that, and I think that's kind of the biggest fall off for Dansby coming back to the Braves is it's not the biggest priority. You have a guy who can very well fit into the position, young, but can fit into the position in Vaughn Grissom, and I firmly believe that they are promoting that Vaughn Grissom, if no Dansby, they're going Vaughn Grissom. And I'll be honest with you guys, I know it's not the popular opinion, but I'm okay with that. I really am. And I wasn't initially. I didn't think he was MLB ready. But the more I thought about it, I think a young bat like that can actually thrive in a lineup that is built like the Braves lineup. And I don't think we were so reliant on Swanson this year that missing him is going to be that big of a factor. To me, it's very similar to the Freeman situation. I mean, what would we have done if Matt Olson had not been around? You know, I mean, we would have had to fill it in some kind of way. But I think even with that absence, we would have been able to have a successful offense in general. Now, that being said, it's obviously going to be missing a leader, but I do think that the offense would have been able to stand against a lot of others and be just as good. I mean, you're talking about a kid that hit 292 this year and had a few big homers. I mean, I think Vaughn Grissom has a lot of potential. So we'll see. We will see. The Mad Monk says pitching is what I'm most concerned about. As much as I love Dansby, he is replaceable. If we can get at least one frontline starting pitcher, I think we'll be all right. Now, here's the deal, right? When Charlie Morton is your number 4, we're doing all right. You got Max Fried, Spencer Strider, who came out of freaking nowhere last year, Kyle Wright. That's your front 3. And then you have Morton on the back end. You really need that 5th starter, but you know, here's the thing. A lot of people want us to go out and get a Rodon or, you know, whoever the case may be. They got these names. You know, DeGrom and Verlander were 2 of those names. I would say this. You have 4 or 5 guys in the minors competing over it. And I know that's not exciting. I know that just makes you sick. But one of those guys is Mike Soroka. Another one of those guys is Bryce Elder. And another one is Kyle Muller. Right? You have guys that are legit competing for that 5th spot who could probably start on a number of other teams tomorrow. I think pitching has almost handled itself in that regard now. Unless the deal just fell backwards into Alex Anthopoulos' lap, there was no reason for that, to go out and get a DeGrom. You know, I'm okay with not paying him. I'm more apt to pay a left fielder or Dansby in that case. You know, we'll see. That's kind of where I am on that. But, yeah, look, there's certainly many things that the Braves need to do before the season begins to make them the competitor that we know them to be. I would really like them to sign Dansby. I think that would be a great starting point, and then I would like them to go out and get Brian Reynolds. I think that would be, you know, ideal. But there's other things that could be done too. You know, Rick Prada, you hit the nail on the head. I'm looking at your comment up there right now. We need to lock up Fried. Make no mistake, we need to lock up Fried. Fried is a free agent, I believe, in 2026, and he is one of the few guys like Dansby that never really signed a long-term extension. He's waiting for that free agency. And if he gets there, he is going to get paid. You're talking about a guy who won World Series Game 6 after getting his ankle stepped on. We all remember that. Is a frontline ace for multiple years. That guy is going to get paid. I have no doubt about it. And I think at this point I've accepted that. I don't think we are going to lock him up for one of these deals where, you know, he's not going to go away. We're going to have to pay him if he's going to stay. So we'll see what happens with that. Of course, we're a few years away from that, but, you know, we will see. Mark Scheimer comes in with a different opinion than what most of us are saying. He says, in my opinion, we need Dansby. He is homegrown, and we will be better with him instead of having Grissom at shortstop. I don't disagree with that. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. I think the situation with Dansby is that we don't want to pay him, you know, too much and for too long. You know, the shortstop position, when you get to a certain age, you know, a lot of guys can't handle it. A lot of guys can't play it anymore. And I don't know that Dansby is necessarily the guy that we want to invest the whole bank account in. We do have a super chat. Thank you, Maverick Sports, for that. Always a big supporter is Maverick. He says, okay, if Trea Turner signs at 11 years, $300 million, we sign Dansby at 8 years, $146 million. Let's see, AAV at 18.3. So that will Dansby. Oh, so that will take care of Dansby's career. Take less for more. Yeah. So basically, what he's saying here is signing him to a slightly longer deal than what I suggested, because I suggested $22 million at 5 or 6 years, which I'm still okay with. Maverick, he suggests 8 years, $146 million. That's averaging out to about $18 million a year. So yeah, I don't disagree with that, and I do think it would take him to the end of the career. I think Dansby is at the point now where he's not going to accept that. I think he's got the free agency. He's going to test the market, and I wouldn't be surprised if he takes, the highest bid. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be that, he's going to take that hometown discount. I hope he does. I think if he wants to win, there's no better place than in Atlanta right now. But we'll again have to play it out and see what happens for sure. Josh Gillum says, we traded the farm for Olsen. Do we have enough pieces for Reynolds? I think so. I do. I know that, our farm system's not quite what it used to be. It's really not, let's be real. But there's been a lot of good pieces come out of there these past couple of years. And, obviously Langoliers was one of them. Pache was one of them. I would say more so Pache than anybody there. But that being said, you had Michael Harris and Spencer Strider come up this year, right? Our farm system is stronger than it's ranked, I believe. Now, that being said, Bryce Elder, Kyle Muller, those two guys, yeah, they're wanted by teams. And I think they would thrive on a team like the Pirates. That being said, do you really want to lose them in a trade for Reynolds? And that's the real question. We have the pieces. It's whether or not we want to get rid of the ones that they want. And I think any team like the Pirates that's just a evergreen non-contender pretty much, I think that they would want starting pitching, and we certainly have that. And, of course, we have Contreras, and we have plenty of other names as well. I think we have the pieces to land Reynolds. I do. And if we don't, add cash to it. That's kind of the way I feel. Now, whether or not they do that or not, we'll see. It's all about what the Pirates value him at, and they do value him at a staggering height. Rightfully so. I mean, he is that good of a player, but they really value him and his future. I mean, it would be like picking up another Olsen. That would be the extent of how good Brian Reynolds is. So we'll see. Last year, I think he hit 260 something with 29 homers. So that's the bat you'd be getting there. And the Pirates believe that he's only going to get better, as do I. So it's all about risk and reward, right? I mean, we'll see how it is, but we have enough. I just don't know if we're going to want to expend it all on one purchase, if that makes sense. Joe Reese, he says, I would put in Ian Anderson with Ozuna in a trade package. I believe Soroka will be the fifth starter. They're not going to pay him for almost $3 million to sit in the minors. Oh, Soroka's coming up. Make no mistake. Soroka is definitely going to make an appearance in the majors this year. A full winter. He's going to be healthy. He is going to be back. I don't know that the Braves have completely lost faith in Ian Anderson, but after they sent him down last year, he never really picked himself back up, to tell you the truth. So I wouldn't mind seeing him in a trade, but I don't know how high his value is, and I would almost rather keep him around till his value got higher, if that makes any sense. I would almost rather keep him around until his value perked up and got higher and got better. But again, we'll see what happens. Now, Ozuna, I'll take in any trade. I mean, you could trade me a bologna sandwich, and I would be okay with it. But we'll see. I do agree with you that Soroka is going to be at least a competitor for that fifth spot. And if he comes in like he was pitching back when he was healthy, he's going to be that fifth starter. He may even be good enough to not be considered the fifth starter, if you get where I'm going with that. Leslie Anderson's, the Braves will have the money to pay Fried. I agree with that. I think once the Ozuna deal's gone, and I think that's – if you look at the contracts, like the contract that Spencer Strider signed, it's long-term. Eventually he's going to be making like $20 million a year. This year he's making $1 million, which I don't know how many of you guys knew that. He's making $1 million, okay? And that is because they're basically navigating it around the Ozuna contract. They're paying Ozuna – $16 million, and they're navigating those contracts to pay more later to navigate around the Ozuna contract. Harris, too. Harris, I believe, is only making $7 million this year, and I think it'll make more and more each year. They're navigating around that contract, and you can't blame them. I mean, they don't want to expend it all in 1 year. So we'll, of course, see how it goes, but I do believe they'll have the money to pay Fried, too. Josh Gillen brings up a good point. He says the longer it drags out, the more Dansby is gone. Same thing with Freddie last year. Yeah, I had that conversation with a friend of mine earlier today, and they asked me, what do you think about Dansby? And I said, well, look, if last year taught us anything, it's that the longer it goes, the less of a chance, I will say the difference with Freddie was the lockout. That it was kind of the perfect storm where teams felt, especially the Braves, felt like they had to get something done. They had to, protect themselves. And I think any other year, Freddie probably winds back with the Braves, which is a crazy thing to think about, but I do believe that. I firmly do believe that. So, look, every year is different. We'll see how it goes with Dansby. Every negotiation is different, but we'll just see. Mark Scheimer, I'm going to go into a little more about when Dansby will sign. I think we will see Dansby after he is married on the 10th. I think, maybe. We'll see how it goes. I think Dansby's really going to hold out till all the other contracts are done. But, we'll see. Sutton says that, I think we should trade Ian Anderson, Ozuna, and Elder or Muller for Reynolds. So you want to put a trade package together with Ozuna, Ian Anderson, and Bryce Elder. Let's call it Bryce Elder. I think that could land Reynolds. I think you may even have to throw a little extra cash just to convince Pittsburgh that they're getting the better end of that deal, which I think they would be, because let's face it, Pittsburgh is not going to compete anywhere near the future. Now, that being said, they don't view themselves that way. And the reason I know that is because David Bednar. Everybody wanted David Bednar last year, and it would have been smart by Pittsburgh to trade him last year because he was at his peak value that he ever will be last year. And he is not going to be a fundamental part of their, future in the next few years. He's just not. He's a bullpen arm. He's a closer. He would have done a lot of good things if he had been on a competitive team. But Pittsburgh said no. They're just difficult. Pittsburgh is a very weird team. And, it just, the way they think about it it's weird. If it was me, I'd be like, give me your top 3 prospects and you can have David Bednar. And they weren't going for that. So, we'll see. Trav says, do you think the White Sox would deal Tim Anderson? I don't. I think that's very unlikely. I just do. They're in a transitional period, so nothing, is ever impossible. But it is a very, I just think it's very unlikely. He's one of their stars. He sells jerseys. He sells tickets. I just don't think so. And he's also young. He's got time. He could be, he could be what Freddie was when the Braves rebuilt. He could be that one consistent, consistent player you keep around to be in the lineup for years to come, that you build around, essentially, if they ever wanted to do that. He is that good of a player, and I just think it's unlikely. Nothing's ever impossible, but I think it's unlikely. Sutton says, do you think we will get another bullpen arm or re-sign Luke Jackson? I think we're going to re-sign Luke Jackson. I think we're also going to get some more bullpen arms, especially now that we're down Tyler Matzik as well and Kenley Jansen. I think we're going to do a lot with the pen. But I do think we are going to re-sign Luke Jackson. I'll tell you why. When I interviewed Luke Jackson a few months ago, I actually asked him, hey, how are you feeling, man? Are you feeling like you're going to come back? And he basically told me he hopes so. Like, he hopes that he gets an offer. And it's not exactly like Luke has got the biggest argument when it comes to like a pay raise. He did great in 2021, but being out with Tommy John for a year now, the Braves have a right to question, should we pay you X amount of dollars? They do. So I think we're going to re-sign him, and I don't think it's going to be for a staggering number. I also would be surprised if we didn't go for more bullpen help. I really would. Walker says, who will replace Dansby if he signs elsewhere? Vaughn Grissom. That's where I'm at. I don't think we're going to go get anybody, which I know might disappoint you, but I think you could get more by getting a left field bat and Brian Reynolds or whoever you want, even like a J.D. Martinez if you wanted to. You could get more bang for your buck in left field because there's more left fielders, and have a stopgap in Vaughn Grissom and Orlando Arcia at shortstop. And supplement the offense for defense there. And look, as long as somebody's hitting homers, I don't really see a problem there. You're not going to necessarily replace a great shortstop with a great shortstop, but you can still replace a great bat with a great bat. And I think you have more bang for your buck in left field than you do shortstop at the moment. Let's see. Knitter says, no shift next year. Let Dansby go. Trade for Willy Adames and Christian Yelich for Ozuna, Elder, and Rosario. Yeah, I don't know that I'm buying that. I mean, I think I don't think Ozuna, Elder, and Rosario are going to land Yelich and Adames. I don't, because you'd still be getting a, if you're the Brewers, you'd still be getting a bad deal with Ozuna to replace the bad deal you gave Yelich. And I only say bad deal because of how much Yelich has fallen off. It's a bad deal for a bad deal. But I don't know that I think Rosario can be a lot better this year. I think what he dealt with this year, eyesight wise, and I really think he's going to be a much better player. His baseball card says he's going to be a much better player. I mean, history tells us that. Elder, I think, has a lot of potential too. I don't know that I necessarily want to lose him in that trade. I would much rather just trade for Willie Adames if we're going to do it. I mean, forget Yelich. I'm good with that. Joe Reese says Anderson is beginning to look like Sean Newcomb. Newcomb got sent down and never recovered. Anderson is showing some similar signs. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I mean, we've seen plenty of pitchers come up, have success, struggle, and never come back. And that could happen. Sean Newcomb had every opportunity, never really found it again. Anderson could certainly be that. He could find his way and be right back. I mean, whoever really knows? I hope that's not the case. I hope he's a fundamental part of the future, or at least has a good career elsewhere, whatever the case may be. But, I mean, we'll again have to see. Mark Scheimer, apparently Liam Hendricks has been available in trades. Yeah, I've heard that. I think that would be the type of surprise Double-A might drop on us. I mean, I'm sure that he's at least checking in on something like that. He's a little shaky, like Jake Hobby says, but he's still a good arm. And it's not like we are scared to go sign a shaky arm. I mean, we had Kenley Jansen last year, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if we went and did something like that. I wouldn't be surprised with anything, honestly. Richard Davis says, if Dansby leaves, send Contreras and Anderson and a couple more low-level prospects for Reynolds and Bednar. I wouldn't be mad at it. I really wouldn't, because I think it would fix a lot of problems. Bednar would be a good arm. I don't know if he'd be as good as he was this past year, especially before the trade deadline. I do think Reynolds would be worth it. That would be the one player that I would say is worth it. And then you could, again, stopgap it at shortstop with Vaughn Grissom. Corey Carter says you could always move Ozzie back to short. And, yes, that's true. But I don't know that it would necessarily fix anything because you'd still have to find a second baseman. Vaughn Grissom's a better shortstop than he is a second baseman. It's not like we have a second baseman just ready to go. I don't think there's a second baseman in the free agency line that's just the perfect deal either, because, I mean, even if there was just an outstanding second baseman there, which I'm sure there is, I can't think of one on top of my head, you're still going to have to pay him, and at that point I'd rather just pay Dansby. But, we'll see. The possibility is certainly there. I mean, you could be a little bit more flexible in your infield just in general. With the Dansby Swanson loss, you could move Ozzie to short day to day, depending on what you want to do, year to year, too, because he's going to be around a long time. I would just be surprised if Dansby doesn't want to come back. I mean, you think about all the players that he has a good relationship with, the Acuñas, the Ozzies, the Austin Riley, Max Fried, Kyle Wright, who he went to Vandy with. I would just be surprised if he has no attachment. I mean, you got to think he wants to come back. But, again, we'll see. Joshua Estates, what are your thoughts on Brandon Nimmo? For one, he's a free agent, so we wouldn't have to trade. I see your question there, but he's a free agent. Yeah, I mean, possibly. I don't know that he's the guy I want. I liked him when he was with the Mets, which I know sounds like a weird thing to say. I mean, he was a good player. And look, I mean, when you look at the Mets lineup, they do things well. They do certain things well. I love Jeff McNeil. I just love the type of player he is. Nimmo is very similar in that regard, where he's just a good player. I like Brett Gardner, right? Like just the Pete Rose style, play the game hard, and Nimmo reminds me a lot of that, plays the game the right way type of thing. I would like him if he was a Brave. That being said, I don't know if he's necessarily where we're going to go either. Let's see. Leary says Ozzie doesn't have the arm strength for shortstop. I don't know, man. He hits balls out of the park on a regular basis. I would question that. I don't think he has to throw hard at second base, but I think he's probably got the arm strength. And not to mention, I saw him play in the minors at short, and he was fantastic. I don't know that I can necessarily back that statement. So Anyway, to put a bow on tonight, because I'm going to have to wrap it up here in just a second, to put a bow on it, again, a lot's happening in the NL East. No doubt about it. A lot is happening in the NL East. The Mets, of course, have signed Justin Verlander. Very similar deal to what DeGrom had. I will say this about that deal. It does make me question the Mets a bit, because when I look at it, they're paying Verlander $6 million more than what DeGrom is making per year. Now that's normal. We talked about more for less earlier. That's kind of what's going on there. DeGrom left. He got a 5-year deal and is getting paid less per year. But for Steve Cohen and the Mets, who have never shied away from spending money, I'm just surprised that they wouldn't try to keep DeGrom, which makes me wonder. Verlander's 39 years old. He's only got a couple more years left in his career, more than likely. More successful years anyway. I would think that ultimately, for me, I look at it and I say the Mets basically don't believe that they have a 5-year window, right? DeGrom took a 5-year window. I think they took a chance to see what Verlander can do in the next 2 years, but it is what it is. There's multiple things that could be. It could be that DeGrom, just like Drew Phillips says, just wanted out. It could very well be that. I know I would certainly want out of New York after this year. You're an ace who can't get any run support for 3 or 4 years, and then the one time you have a bad year, they boo you. I mean, same thing with Judge right now. The one time you have a bad game in the playoffs, they boo you. That's New York though. I think ultimately I don't know. If I'm the Mets, I look at it and I say our window is the next couple of years, because Edwin Diaz, you signed to a 5-year deal, which I don't understand why you would sign a bullpen arm to a 5-year deal. But, that's just me. He's good. I just don't understand it. That being said, I like the Verlander deal if I'm a Mets fan. I do. I absolutely do. The fact that they're going out and paying that much money for a guy who just won the Cy Young is exciting. Now, to be fair, they did the same thing with Scherzer, and Scherzer didn't exactly come in clutch last year at the end. That being said, it's not necessarily going to be the case again. I mean, they are investing in their starting rotation, and there's no better way to respond after losing DeGrom than signing Justin Verlander, unless you somehow landed Sandy Alcantara or Shohei Ohtani or something just so far out there. There's no better way to respond after losing Jacob DeGrom. Now, it's similar to the Freeman Olsen saga last year. Ron Washington had a perfect quote when I interviewed him. He said, if you can't get Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson is who you want. If you can't get Jacob DeGrom, Justin Verlander would probably be who you would want. So credit to the Mets. I respect that deal a lot more than I respect the Philly deal with Trea Turner. I just think 11-year, $300 million, those deals never end well. You look at what Tatis, that whole situation this year. Harper has been up and down ever since he signed a big-time deal. Trout has been up and down ever since he signed a big-time deal. Pujols fell off right after he signed a big-time deal years ago. They just never end well. I don't know why people continue to do it, and I never will. But credit to them. I mean, they went out and did it. I think it's a dumb decision, but that's me. It is what it is. I will say that I'm glad that the Mets don't have both Jacob DeGrom and Justin Verlander. They're at least keeping it fair, but I will say that. But credit to them. Again, they did well. Trea Turner to the Phillies. Credit to the Phillies for spending money. But I would much rather be on the side that spends smart money and not stupid money. And we know the Phillies like to spend stupid money. Direct quote from the Phillies themselves. Now, again, last thing I'm going to say, Verlander and Scherzer, I said this earlier, but for those of you that tuned in late, I'm going to say this. Verlander and Scherzer are both put together are making $86 million this year. Okay? Now, if you were to buy from the Braves, you could land Olsen, Riley, Acuna, Albies, Fried, Strider, Harris, Darno, and Contreras for $4 million less at $82 million. You tell me who the executive of the year should be. I'll take Alex Anthopoulos any day of the week. We have a super chat, another one from Maverick. Thank you, Maverick. He says, okay, you get rid of Ozuna, Anderson, Grissom, and Cash for Lopez and Soler and trade trade simulation has it at 15.9, Braves, Marlins, 17.8 for this deal. I don't hate it. I don't. I would love to get Soler back. I would obviously love Pablo Lopez. I just don't. I don't think they're going to want to lose. I don't think they're going to want to lose Grissom. But it could happen. I mean, it could happen. I think Ozuna would fit in better in Miami, to tell you the truth. I don't think it's too crazy. It's not a crazy trade idea. If you missed that video, it's a good watch. I don't think it's a crazy trade idea. I actually think it's a pretty sensible one. Of course, Trade Simulation agrees with me there, but I don't think it's going to happen. That's what I would say there. That being said, thank you, Maverick, for both of your super chats tonight. Those are appreciated. We are going to wrap it up here. I have to go get back to work. I appreciate all of you tuning in tonight. It really does help the channel grow, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful night. Enjoy the rest of the Hawks game, and, of course, I will see you later on. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time right here at On Deck.